After my divorce from my husband was finalized, I waited a while before finally putting myself back on the dating scene. But when I did, the first app that I downloaded was Tinder, and that turned out to be the second biggest mistake of my life. The first is my husband, and not just because we got a divorce. You see, when I created my profile on Tinder, I was very honest that I was a newly divorced woman who was looking for someone to enjoy life with, even though I didn't know where that would lead. It wasn't long before I started getting matches and had to deal with an influx of guys there who definitely weren't looking for a relationship like I was. That is, until I matched with a man who said his name was Clark. He said that he had worked in construction most of his life, and we both bonded over the fact that we both own a German Shepherd. I loved my dog and Clark loved him, and before long we began really talking about our lives and all of the things we've done or haven't done. We chatted for a few weeks, and I'll admit there were a few times when our conversations turned a little bit R-rated, and eventually we both decided that we would meet up and have dinner together. He claimed to be working a little late, but we were going to meet up around 8 p.m. at this Italian restaurant that was about half an hour from my house. As it was getting closer and closer to the time when I should have been leaving my house, I started getting dressed, but I was surprised when the power in my house went out. At that time, I was in my upstairs bathroom, and I began looking around for my phone so that I could have some sort of light to see where I was going. I wasn't sure what was wrong, but I figured the place that I should check was the fuse box. Once I managed to find my phone on the bathroom counter, I turned on the flashlight and then made my way over to the bathroom door. My entire plan changed as soon as I opened the door. I was getting ready to leave the bathroom when I heard the sound of something moving around downstairs. At first, I thought it might have been Jack, my dog, but then I remembered that I put him in the backyard to run around for a little while before I went on my date. I decided to poke my head out of the bathroom and try to see down the staircase in hopes of figuring out what was going on in the living room. But when I did, what I saw caused me to quickly duck back into the bathroom. As I poked my head around the corner, I saw the light of a flashlight shining from downstairs. I locked the door to the bathroom and immediately called 911. As I waited for the operator to pick up, I could hear the sound of footsteps walking up the stairs. I was elated when I heard the voice on the other line pick up and ask me what the problem was. As quietly as I could, I whispered into the phone that there was an intruder in my home, and then I gave the dispatcher my address. As soon as I finished whispering the address, I fell silent, because I could hear whoever was in my house walking across the upstairs hallways. The light from their flashlight got brighter and brighter through the crack in the door as they got closer to the bathroom. I did my best not to scream as I heard the door handle jiggling as if they were trying to open it. However, I couldn't hold back anymore once the person started throwing their body against the door to force it open. The 911 operator reassured me that someone was on the way to my location and that help would be there soon, but there wasn't much that I could do. I just about jumped out of my skin as the door gave out and busted wide open. I couldn't see anything past the flashlight shining in my face as the intruder got closer. I dropped my phone as they grabbed me and pulled me across the floor and out into the hallway. Through my tears, I asked them why they were doing this, and all they replied was, "You know why." Within a second, I recognized the voice of the intruder as my ex-husband, Josh. I tried to fight back and struggle, but when I did, he just threw my body up against the wall and smacked my head against it. I continued to cry as I fell to the floor, and at that point, I could hear my dog barking in the backyard. My ex continued to talk, but I couldn't quite hear what he was saying as he pushed me down the staircase. By the time I hit the first floor of my house, I was completely disoriented, and I could hear the sound of him running back down the stairs as I tried to crawl away. And once he reached me, he grabbed onto the back of my head, came in close to my ear, and whispered, "No one is going to miss you, you know." And just as he got ready to smash my face into the floor, I heard the sound of the front door kicking open as 3 officers rushed into my home. They quickly got my ex-husband off of me and arrested him before getting a statement from me about what had happened. After I had the chance to get my phone, I sent a message to Clark to let him know that I had to cancel our date that night. However, a few seconds later after I sent the message, one of the officers walked up to me and showed me my ex-husband's phone. I was shocked when I saw the message I had just sent went straight to him. It was at that moment I realized that my ex had created a fake account under the name Clark to make sure that I wasn't dating anyone else. If I hadn't managed to call the police in time, I really don't know what would have happened to me. I'll never listen to any of my friends again after they suggested I download Tinder. I just found out that my boyfriend had cheated on me, and after I broke up with him, they told me to get over him by meeting someone new. Normally, I didn't take their suggestions when it came to dating, but for some reason this time I decided to download Tinder as they said, and within minutes I was talking to someone that seemed pretty interesting. We talked for a while, and then eventually he asked me out on a date, which I was admittedly excited about, but I couldn't help but be wary. I told him that I would meet him at the diner between both of our houses and that I would drive there myself just in case the date was a bust. He agreed without an argument, which I took as a good sign, but that feeling that I had about him went away about 20 minutes after I showed up at the diner. We planned to meet up at around 6 p.m. to get dinner, but it was already almost 6:30 and he was nowhere to be found. I actually ended up ordering and eating an entire meal by myself before I ultimately decided to call it quits. I sent him a message that basically told him to go kick rocks, but I was surprised when he responded almost immediately with an apology. He told me that he was right outside and understood if I'd rather just go home since I already ate. I immediately got a weird feeling in my gut because I didn't know how he could know that I had eaten without him. I didn't say anything about that in my message. I began looking around to see if anyone was looking at me, but the diner was actually pretty empty that night. I didn't like the feeling that I was getting, and I decided to ask the waitress if one of the busboys or cooks would be able to walk me to my car, and they graciously accepted. However, even though I felt a bit safer knowing that someone was walking with me, I couldn't help but feel like something was going to go wrong that night. We walked out of the diner and I pointed out my car as we looked around to see if there was anyone outside. We couldn't see anyone though, so I began making my way over to where I was parked, and about halfway to my car, I thanked the cook that walked me out and I told him that I was fine from there. He told me that he would wait by the door until I pulled out of the parking lot, and I'm forever grateful that he did. Nothing happened outside of my car, but when I got into it, I couldn't help but get that strange, ominous feeling again, like something was about to happen. Chills ran down my spine, but I figured that it was just the strange feeling I'd gotten earlier and decided to turn my car on and get ready to leave. As I turned the key in the ignition though, I realized why I felt as if I was in danger. It's because I was. As soon as the car turned on, I felt a pair of hands reach out from the back seat and grip around my neck. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I began flailing my arms and trying to break out of the grasp of whoever was choking me, and in the process, I ended up hitting the horn for a second. That's what gave me the idea to just slam on the horn with both hands and hold it down to alert anyone in the diner that there was something happening. And thankfully, the cook had waited by the door just like he promised. My eyes began to water as the man in my back seat continued to choke me, but I could see through the tears that the cook was running over. My attacker must have seen it too, because at that moment he decided to let go and then quickly stumbled outside of the passenger side of the back seat. He managed to get away since the cook was more concerned with my safety, but I made a statement to the police and filed a report, and thankfully about 2 weeks later I got a call saying that they caught the guy. Apparently, the diner had cameras outside that got footage of the man when he was breaking into my car and hiding in the back seat, and the footage was used to help make the arrest. All I know is that I deleted Tinder and never looked back. Shortly after college, I ended up going through a pretty rough breakup with my longtime girlfriend, and needless to say that I didn't put myself right back out into the dating world, and by the time I decided I was ready to try to find someone again, dating apps had become all the rage. The one that everyone was talking about and that I ended up finding the easiest to use was Tinder. However, not all dates on that app turned out to be good ones, or even safe ones for that matter. For a while I kept making matches, but it seemed like it was with bot accounts, and it wasn't until my second week or so on the app that I connected with someone that I felt safe enough to say was a real person. And the two of us hit it off great. We talked about the music that we liked and all of our favorite movies before eventually deciding that maybe we should meet up in person. When we planned on meeting, she explained to me that she didn't have a car of her own and would need me to pick her up from her house. I told her that it was no problem. I could pick her up before taking her out to a local restaurant that she claimed to love and was actually my favorite place to eat in my town. I had to work on the day that we planned our date, so I told her that I wouldn't be able to come pick her up until about 7:30 or so, and she said that was fine. So when the night finally came, I got off work, ran back to my apartment to shower, and then went to grab her. I pulled up to her house and was pleased to see that it wasn't a fake profile, and the person I had been talking to was actually the person that I was there to meet. She got into the car, and after we officially introduced ourselves in person, I began driving us to the restaurant. I made sure to drive slowly and safely, considering it had just started to rain despite it being sunny all day. But thankfully by that point in the night in our small town, the roads were mostly empty. We were about halfway between her house and the restaurant when she looked at her phone as if she received a message. She immediately looked distraught, and when I asked her what was wrong, she said that she just got a text from her friend who said that my date forgot the clothes that she needed for work at her apartment. That was when my date started saying that she really needed those clothes because she couldn't lose her job. So I tried to calm her down by telling her that I would take her back to pick up the clothes after we had dinner. But that was when she told me that we wouldn't have to go before we ate because her friend was going out. I was a little annoyed, but it really wasn't a big deal. So I told her to give me directions to her friend's house and we would pick up her clothes. We drove about 30 minutes out of town, and right before I was getting ready to ask her where she was taking me, she pointed out a driveway up ahead and claimed that it was her friend's house. As we pulled into the driveway though, I noticed that the house looked really dark and almost like no one was living there. But she didn't say anything, so I continued up the driveway and eventually parked right out front. I expected my date to go and meet her friend, but instead, she simply sat in the car looking out the window into the rain. As I tried to look past her to see what she was looking at, I failed to notice the person walking up to the side of my car. I felt my car door open up behind me, and before I could turn around, someone began trying to pull me out of my seat. I tried to fight back, but that was when I felt something sharp dig into my lower back. It was as if someone had taken the wind out of my chest as I couldn't seem to find my breath. That was when I felt that sharp digging feeling again. And when I looked down, I noticed that whoever was trying to pull me from my car had just stabbed me. I looked up at the man, but I couldn't see his face through the darkness. By that point, I had lost a lot of blood, and I didn't really have the energy to fight back. And that was when I noticed my date wasn't trying to help me or call the police. No, instead she started unbuckling my seatbelt so that the man outside the car could pull me out of it faster. Before I knew it, I was being dropped onto the wet ground, and without any hesitation, the person who attacked me stepped over my body and into the car. They pulled out the driveway as I bled out on the ground with no way of calling for help. The world around me started to go dark right before I noticed a set of headlights that seemed to be driving towards me. And the next thing I remember, I was waking up in a hospital 18 hours later with more than 24 stitches in my back. Thankfully, the police were able to use the information I gave them to track down the girl that had set me up on Tinder, but they couldn't track down my car or the person who had stabbed me.